I'm Turk Strongman at the Ramacharakas. Video number 7. In high order thinking. Before continuing, thank you for selecting this video. Subscribe to the channel. Click on the notification bell. Give this video a thumb up. And in other ways, share the joy of the channel with others. Comment courteously below. We've been talking about high order thinking, metaphorical thinking, and how that critical thinking, creative thinking, conceptual thinking, and abstract thinking get involved in metaphorical thinking. I even pointed out that just talking about this involves some conceptual thinking, which is high order thinking in itself. Let's keep going. It's fairly straightforward that any statement that is a metaphor is a metaphorical statement. But the opposite is not true. Not all metaphorical statements are metaphors. In addition to the layer of complexity and higher order thinking already mentioned, a second one gets invoked and exercised. A second layer. When a metaphorical statement states only half of a metaphor. By leaving it up to us to figure out the existence and content of the other half that's not even put into symbol form. It's not communicated. It's not there. So we have a metaphorical statement, but it's not a metaphor. It's only half a metaphor. Now, how does this look? Well, our metaphor that we were using here, as an example, is sex is war. It's a metaphor. This is that. It's calling one thing another thing. Saying that one thing is something different than what it is. So there is a is such or so, like X is Y. Well, that other half, the Y half, the is such and so, in this second layer of complexity and higher order thinking, shows up when there is no is Y part. There's just X, really. A rough example has it that instead of, say, sex is war, being our metaphorical statement, and it's a metaphor, let's say we only have the word sex, or is war, or just say we only have sex and we have to work out the is war part on our own. Now you see, sex is war is higher order, and there's a layer of complexity involved there, and higher order thinking, a layer of it, right? Bringing in little touches of critical thinking, creative thinking, conceptual thinking, abstract thinking come into play in this metaphorical thinking. Sex is war, but what if there is no is war there? But our statement is aiming towards the same result as the other one. So then it's up to us. We have to get through a first layer before we even a preliminary layer, a deeper layer, or however you want to look at it, another outer shell thrown onto it, whatever. Just to get to sex is war and then figure it out. Because we have to come up with the is war part ourselves too. Here's a popular example of such a thing. People who live in glass houses shouldn't. There's no this is that. There's no direct calling something other than what it is. But it's a metaphorical statement. It's just not straight out a metaphor. It's part of one, but that's it. We accept that this sentence truthfully refers to real things about real things, especially if you've ever heard it before. But if you haven't, let me tell it to you again. People who live in glass houses shouldn't. Let's take it the way it is right here. Let's just start with what we've got. Those symbols, those words. People who live in glass houses shouldn't. We have that. We accept that this sentence truthfully refers to real things about real things, right? And we discern that most likely it refers to more than just the inadvisability of living in a glass house. Yet nothing in the sentence itself calls one thing another thing. There is no is such or so there. Or is this or that. Therefore, in the case of people who live in glass houses shouldn't, it's entirely up to us to reason out what things about people, what fact or set of facts about people and glass houses and their relationships with one another make the overall statement true. And to reason out what other real things and their relationships with one another it refers to in terms of people who live in glass houses shouldn't. That's where we get to calling one thing another thing. Regardless of its complexities, the statement, people who live in glass houses shouldn't, is metaphorical, though, because it expresses states of affairs in terms that normally refer to other states of affairs. Because really, the deep meaning here, the actual true meaning, doesn't really have to do with actual people living in actual glass houses. That whole thing is referring to something else. After a missing word, is. Okay. Like the video? You like which direction this is going? This is some complex, high-order level referring to things, right? And it's all wrapped up in how we think. So it's high-order thinking involved. Especially if we're going to read such a thing and come to what it's trying to get at. Come to what it's getting at. And consider the implications of what it's really saying. The way it gets us to think about people and things that they do and maybe shouldn't do. There are certain relationships there that would exist among people in glass houses, and the fact that they shouldn't do it, that are very much the same as, or are the same as, things that this whole idea of people who live in glass houses shouldn't, is being said is something else. But what is that something else? We have to consider certain relationships among certain things and consider them in certain ways in order to get at what this is getting at. And perhaps there's a whole lot being said there in a very short little bit of a very short statement. In fact, even more being said in the parts that aren't there, but which we must determine. And we can determine by applying higher order thinking. And who knows what we actually arrive at, what makes this statement work, what makes it true and point to real things, the metaphor behind it, the metaphor being pointed at. In the real world, that state of affairs that the metaphor is actually pointing at might have great advice for us. Might be a good thing to live by. Who knows? See? And this is a good way to refer to such things because you can do it in ways that cause a person to have to figure this out and relate to it and relate with it. And it's done in a very, very few words. Did you like this? Do you like this? Give it a thumb up. Subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell thing. Clicky. Ding. Click, ding. Click, 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 ding. Thing. Comment courteously below. Share the joy of the channel with others, and we'll see you in the next video. And thank you again for selecting this one on Higher Order Thinking.